Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to a brand new video here today for some F1 2019 game ideas. Now, this is coming off the back of the previous video we did 2 days ago about 5 things I thought need to change about F1 2018, and in the video I asked you guys in the comments below to let me know game ideas for the new game in there, and we'll kind of collate them together. And so we're going to kick things off here with 10 things we all want to be in F1 2019, the game. Now, it may seem pretty early to do this in the game cycle. The actual 2018 game has only been out for just over a month, but if you really think about it, last year we started these game idea videos way too late. I did all the 2018 game idea videos around kind of April to March time, and that was way too late. But it's pretty much at that stage, they've pretty much made most of the game in terms of the foundational, the building block stuff of the game is already in place, and they're kind of starting to test things out and starting to apply polish everywhere and build out the last remaining details. Whereas at this point of the year, there's still maybe a chance to change, Codemasters' minds, or, implant an idea which is not there currently, and to actually maybe make a difference and implement it for next year's F1 2019 game. It's the same thing with a lot of other sports games like FIFA, for example. A lot of the time, the FIFA kind of creators come way too late with the game ideas because they make their videos at the same time as I did in like April, March, whereas really you should be making them now going into the kind of Christmas period and winter, because this is when you can actually make some difference. So we're going to start things a little bit earlier than last year, because last year every single time I made one of these videos, I kept on saying this is hopefully going to come in for in the future, or for like next year's game, so i.e. 2019. But now we can actually try and maybe hope that one of these smaller ideas maybe makes it into the F1 2019 game if we push hard enough for it, and obviously if you guys are vocal enough as well. But so we're going to get into then these 10 things. We're starting off with number 1, which is going to be the red flag. Pretty simple, but where on earth has the red flag gone? I really missed it. I think a lot of you guys missed it as well. And there's been a lot of instances, especially on this year's 2018 game, where the red flag would be perfect. Like, for example, if you watch my Monaco video where there was an absolute pile-up and a half, that was a categoric red flag situation where it would make sense to put the red flag out, have the safety car go around, and then we line up on the grid and we go again and we start the race again effectively from the 5 red lights. But then obviously you just finish off the race like we had all the way back at the 2011 Monaco Grand Prix. In some instances, it can really change a race. It saved Sebastian Vettel's race back then in 2011 and kind of shunned and stopped Jenson Button and Fernando Alonso chasing him down on fresher tyres, and it can really flip a race round. And we haven't had the red flag in the F1 2018 in the F1 franchise since, I want to say, 2013, I think, or maybe 2014. I think maybe 2014. I think F1 2014 was the last game we had from Codemasters that had the red flag in it. Now, I don't know the exact reasoning of why it was removed. I don't know if a higher up said to remove it, because it doesn't actually make sense, because it's not realistic to not have the red flag, because it is a part of Formula 1. I don't know if it's an agenda of they don't like to kind of have the crashing be so much in a race where you need the red flag, but it shouldn't be like that. It should be a realistic thing of having all the kind of actual flags available to the marshals to put out there. And so, it's something that's been missing, and something that could definitely change around the races, especially with the erratic AI that we know and kind of love, or at least I love how erratic they are sometimes. And it would be kind of, just add to the craziness of what a fun kind of offline experience could be on F1 2018, and, obviously with a future game for 2019, hopefully. Number 2, now I saw this one was really thumbs up quite a bit in the comments section of that video I did 2 days ago, which was better customization, and also specifically better customization for the helmet itself. A lot of people thinking that the sponsors on the cars should go onto your actual helmet. Now, there's obviously restrictions with what you can do in terms of designing stuff and designing the helmet. They give us preset designs where you can change the colors around, and on console, obviously, you're stuck with that. On PC, you can modify it and put your own helmet into the game, but on the consoles, there should be, so on the base game, basically, so all the console guys can also enjoy it, there should be, I think, that it shouldn't be too difficult to basically match the sponsors to the helmet. So you already know what the sponsors are of that team due to the actual drivers. So, Sebastian Vettel has the Ferrari sponsors on his helmet. It should be a pretty simple job of just having a template file somewhere where it's all the sponsors lined up with like a transparency layer, basically. And so it just gets pasted onto your design. So you design your helmet, that's all well and good. And then every time you go into a new team, the game just picks out, okay, it's Team Ferrari, let's pick out the sponsor layer here and just slap the sponsors on. It shouldn't be too difficult. And I think it's something that should happen, because that's not really a licensing issue because you're matching it to the team you're driving for. You're not going to keep the same sponsors when you move to a team. The game will recognize, okay, you're driving for Red Bull now, so let's put the Red Bull sponsors on. It'd be really cool to actually have a big-ass Red Bull sponsor on your helmet when you actually move there, instead of it looking very, very apparently like it's like, you know, like you in a cut. It's like one of those moments where it's like like GTA when you have your custom character in a cutscene. It looks ridiculous. It's almost like that. Like you see your custom helmet in the game, and you can tell it's a custom helmet. It's not one of the actual drivers out there because it's so plain and just has the coloring and the design on, but it's got no sponsors. It's so barren. It's almost like you've turned up and you've got like £0 to your name in Formula One, and you can't even afford personal sponsors or anything like that. So I think it'd be really cool to just simply have the actual licensed sponsors on their helmet. I'm not talking about made-up sponsors. I'm talking about the actual team ones. Just have them on there. Number 3. Now, they've kind of half solved this issue at the start of the race, but it's very, very apparent mid-race still that the AI train track way too much still, in my opinion and a lot of your guys' opinions. In the race start, they've definitely fixed it. On the race start, no longer do they get stuck behind one another. You can see plenty of AI making dive bombs and going 4 wide into turn 1, depending on the track and their space, into turn 1 on lap 1. But then once you get past lap 1, on lap 2 onwards, basically, they do fall into a bit of a trap of going train tracky a bit too much, unless obviously they're trying to make an overtake or they're defending their position. But I think there needs to be more of a randomness about their racing line, perhaps, or, you know, I don't know, kind of increase the possibility if it's maybe a thing in the coding, increase the possibility of them pulling out the slipstream to try and make an overtake, just so it actually seems like there's a bit of difference. They might not be actually able to make an overtake, but just up the probability of them moving out of the slipstream to try and maybe make one, just so it kind of almost looks a bit more realistic in terms of AI not kind of going in one single file, because it definitely happens a lot in terms of traffic. It does hold up the AI way too much that they can't intelligently kind of try a different racing line maybe, and it does also come up sometimes when you're trying to overtake cars and there's one slow car ahead. You can get caught out quite a bit and get brake checked into a corner because they're train tracking too much in the middle of the race. So it is something that they did a good job on fixing on lap 1, but after lap 1 it still needs some tweaking for sure going into the future games. It's not just a 2019 thing. I hope, you know, for future generations of the F1 game, hopefully they keep on improving that to a point where it's very, very kind of a fluidity of how the AI move about on the racing line. Number 4, someone said we need more info from the engineer mid-race about strategy plays and also tyre wear options for different strategies. So obviously we have the alternative strategy thing on the right hand side that comes up that gives you 2 different strategies. But it'd be nice to maybe for the engineer to say, if you pit on this one, you can get the undercut potentially and jump some cars, and the tyre wear might be like this. You know, you might have to take these tyres for 10 laps. If he literally says 10 laps, that'd be really useful, because in the middle of the race then, if you're concentrating on the driving and you just hear the info, that's fine. You can carry on driving. You don't need to do some kind of mathematics in your head, or you don't need to look at the tyre wear yourself on the heads-up display. Basically trying to stop the reliance on the heads-up display. The heads-up display is brilliant. It's great. The MFD on the right-hand side, it's good. It's got a lot of info. I'm not faulting that. But at the same time, I think also some people, I think, like the experience of not really using the heads-up display too much, because in real life, you don't have that. Obviously, it's a video game, so you half and half it. But I think it would be nice kind of for the engineer to give you a bit more info about, okay, if you pit this lap, it's not just there's an alternative strategy available, which is the same line he says. Maybe just say, if we pit this lap, we could get an undercut on the car ahead, or we could get an overcut on the car ahead if you're going to carry on. And then also maybe say, but the tyre wear may be a bit higher, or but we may need to take these tyres for 10 laps, or we do need to switch to the medium tyre instead of the super softs maybe. So that'd be really nice to have him be a bit more kind of proactive, I guess, in the messages he's giving. Obviously, I know it's difficult because it has to be a bit robotic, so they can actually implement the kind of script, I guess you could say, of what the engineer's lines are for every single scenario available. But, you know, it's just nice to hopefully to keep on building on it, because from 2017 to 2018, the engineer really hasn't changed too much in the lines he says. It'd be nice to actually see some build up on the engineer and improvements of how many lines he has in terms of, you know, they can say in any scenario. Number 5, now this is tacking on from what I said in the 5 things that need to change about the player reliability, and a really good idea, and it's kind of nicking it from Motorsport Manager. But again, like with FIFA sometimes, where there's been plenty of FIFA ideas that can come from FIFA Manager, there's a lot of ideas from Motorsport Manager and the F1 Manager games out there that the official F1 game can kind of take and, you know, implement and make the game a lot better. So failure rates in components. So instead of there just being, oh, your part's worn out, let's change it, to try and maybe make the player reliability a bit more kind kind of tactile and fluid, I guess, in terms of meaning a lot more for what you're doing. Whilst you drive and you wear out components, at the same time, you could have a bit of the bar become red, and that becomes a red zone effectively. So you start off with a 0 red zone. So you look at the bar, you look at the component, and it's completely green, 0 wear, 0 failure rate, and then as you wear the component, so the wear rate goes up to, let's say, 40%, you then get a red failure rate bar of about 10%, and so that means there's a 10% chance that your part is going to fail. So, with the added restriction of only 3 components, or in the case of some, 2 components available for some parts of the engine, basically, you're going to get to a point where the failure rate is high enough, at 40% hopefully, that you can actually have a failure mid-race, and then therefore, you can actually have some player unreliability, and you can actually have an engine failure for yourself. So it's not just down to chance in a way, it's also down to you driving and making a difference. At the same time, if Codemasters wants to argue, okay, we don't want to make it a kind of guessing game, a bit of luck, a bit of pot luck of, a player's going to get really angry if they kind of get unlucky, it's now on to the actual player. If you don't take care of it, you can just completely get a DNF out the race if there's a complete failure rate, because you got into the kind of red zone of the wear. I think that'd be a really good idea. It works really well in Motorsport Manager, for sure, because you can really risk it for a chocolate biscuit, and there's a good chance it works out, but there's also a good chance it doesn't work out, and I think that's a fair way to do it. So it actually puts the emphasis on what the player's doing again, instead of taking it to chance, which I guess is the big issue why they don't really do that right now, is because if they put it to chance, like I said in the other video, someone's going to get annoyed that they've done like a 100% race, they're in like the last 5 laps, and it fails. But then at the same time, that's F1 sometimes. It is cruel. Number 6 is going to be team orders and commands. Now, this has been something that's cropped up not for just F1 2018, but even before in previous games. It happened a lot in co-op with myself and Tom, where you want to tell your AI teammate, pit in now, because I'm going one more lap, why don't you pit in now? Instead, he always stays out with you, and then he either mistakenly pits on the same lap as you, or goes out 1 lap longer, because the AI brain of your teammate basically goes, okay, my player teammate's pitting this lap, I'll pit the next lap. If you go on for 1 more lap, the AI then goes again, oh, he's pitting this lap, I'm going to go next lap. And so he extends his stint by 2 laps when he doesn't need to. He could have done the undercut on you because you wanted to stay out. I think there should be a way to tell your engineer, I'm going to stay out 1 lap, so therefore inform my teammate that he can come in if he wants to. And also at the same time, I think team orders would be really cool. If you are the second driver, you've got the contract of a second driver, let's say you just got to the new team, or let's say you've messed up on bargaining, on negotiating, you couldn't negotiate a first driver position, your second driver position, there should be a kind of emphasis on it actually means something. Right now, the only difference between first driver and second driver is the R&D bonus, but I think there should also be a difference in the race of if you are behind your teammate and you're trying to overtake him, maybe for the win, occasionally maybe if it's important for the championship, your engineer says don't overtake him, and if you do overtake him, that's a reputation decrease for the team. Vice versa, if you want to tell the engineer, tell my teammate to let me through because I'm the first driver, then you can do that, and if you're the second driver, you just can't say that and you have to try and overtake him on your own accord. It'd be really cool to see those scenarios where there's an actual multi kind of 21 situation, and if you ignore it, you actually get a rep decrease, and it affects the rest of your contract and your negotiations and your reputation in the paddock. And if you obey it, then you get other consequences of, maybe your AI, maybe the teammate knows now that he's going to be the first driver for longer, something like that, just to make it a bit more interesting and spicy inter-team kind of rivalry, basically. Number 7, more pressing questions in the interviews. Right now, they do a good job. There's some kind of interesting questions about your teammate, other drivers, teams, but I think there needs to be even more pressing questions about drivers, about teams, to make sure you can get fluctuations of reputation. Like I said, the reputation system, it's a lot better than it was in 2017, but at the moment, I feel like there's not enough peaks and troughs and swings about what happens when you say stuff in interviews. Forget about what you do on the track, driving, that's a different matter, and what you do by moving teams. Like I said on the video about 5 things that need to change about F1 2018, what you say in an interview should matter a lot more, and I think the interviewer needs to also press a lot more about specifics about other teams, maybe about other drivers, so that you get a chance to then mess up potentially and say something out of line that gets you a rep decrease. Number 8. Now, this is kind of flowing on from number 7, but I think there needs to be driver reputation. In terms of not what we've got right now, I think there needs to be bars for every single driver, just like the teams, on what they think about you. So, let's say you piss off Sebastian Vettel, you hit him, you cause him DNF, or you force him to have a bit of an end plate missing. I think there needs to be a reputation decrease for that driver. You can see all 20 or 19 drivers. You can see their bars and you can see which ones respect you, which ones do not, which ones have a kind of grudges against you or rivalry. If you get too low on the reputation, it becomes a rivalry. It kind of gets labeled as one. If the bar is so high, then it basically gets labeled as a respect kind of thing. Where if you're on track and maybe you're not on the you're racing and maybe you're the AI is a little bit less aggressive, maybe it can alter their aggression stats on how hard they're going to fight you, basically. So I think that would be really cool, just like the teams, to have that difference driver to driver, because that definitely happens in real life. We know certain drivers aren't so, kind to other drivers. Let's say Hulkenberg and Magnussen, they're not too kind to each other, but then vice versa. I think Magnussen's pretty friendly with other drivers, same with Hulkenberg as well. So I think that'd be really nice to have that kind of play in, because it definitely is something that we see pretty much every single weekend in F1. We see other drivers kind of getting goody-goody with other drivers, and they kind of become kind of work friends, I guess. At the same time, you have the kind of long-standing rivalries like Alonso and Vettel, where they don't really fancy talking to each other, and also Hamilton and Vettel kind of a little bit awkward in terms of when they want to talk to each other. And so I think it'd be kind of nice to have that brought out in the game with reputation system. Number 9. Now, this is again flowing on from point number 8, which flowed on from number 7, but I think there needs to be fluid AI stats and fluid AI in terms of changing how good they are over the course of the 10 seasons. So, like Motorsport Manager, each driver has stats, and as they age, those stats can go down. If they do something good, the stats can go up. If they do something bad, stats can go down. And I think there needs to be a case in the F1 game. I think it'd be really cool if a driver, let's say a midfield driver, goes and gets a great podium. It's a boost for morale, so their AI stats go up a little bit. So the next race, they take that positive energy, and you'll see that AI performing a little bit better, maybe compared to what he used to do and compared to his teammate. Vice versa, if they have a DNF, if they crash out stupidly or they have an incident, their morale goes down, some stats go down a little bit, maybe they lose some confidence, and so they're not as good in the next race. They have to try and build back up that kind of AI stat, and they have to actually build back up that speed that may be lost. I'm not talking a heap, I'm literally talking like if you do something bad, let's say it's, Hamilton, crashes out or something. Obviously, a driver of Hamilton's caliber isn't going to lose it completely after one bad race, but I'm just talking about a tiny little difference, and maybe that's the thing. Like, if it's an older driver, a more established driver, they don't lose too much, but if it's a younger driver, let's say Hartley or Stroll, they do something bad, it's a big hit to their AI stats, and then they massively lose confidence, and then vice versa, if they do well, they massively improve. And then also, over the 10 seasons, because we do not have driver transfers, I think the next best thing we could see to kind of have some change in the kind of way people behave on the grid, it would be really nice, as we go on through the 10 seasons, that the younger drivers get better and the older drivers get worse. So your Kimi Räikkönens, your Hamiltons, your Vettels, as we get to season 10 of career mode, they are not the same drivers they were in season 1. They have lost speed, they have lost qualifying pace, they have lost race pace, and vice versa. The younger guys, Gasly, over 10 seasons, Carlos Sainz gets better over 10 seasons. So the Carlos Sainz that you have in season 1 is not the Carlos Sainz in season 10. It's a much better Carlos Sainz. Basically, almost like each season, the game kind of reviews what their season was like. Should they go up and down in performance? And I think that's a really good way to kind of do it and kind of get around the issue of there's no driver transfers at the moment. So the next best thing, I guess, would be driver AI that can actually get worse or better over the 10 seasons, and so that it doesn't look like you're in season 10 and yet everyone's driving like they're in season 1 still, because they technically are, because to the game, under the skin of it, doesn't know the difference, basically. But it'd be great to see if they did know the difference and they kind of age, I guess, with time that you go through the career mode. And number 10, going off of that little last point of obviously we don't have driver transfers, I think obviously we've all said it for so many times, and every single time I've also batted away that we can't really say it because of the red tape of the licensing issues with Codemasters. But I think now is the time to really press Codemasters and say, go to Liberty Media, ask them what you can do about with the license, ask them what the leeway is, because I think now we're getting to the limit of, the only things we're really changing about career mode are smaller fine details or fine tuning stuff, or kind of, it's not actually changing what you're seeing on screen during the race. So I think now is the time, finally. I really implore Cody's to go to Liberty Media and actually really push for the possibility of having driver transfers, or having, just more to the game. Maybe, the lower categories, F2, F3, or just having, a bit maybe of a kind of a story you can create maybe with Liberty Media's help, and, having drivers come in to record audio and whatnot. I don't know, just something that's actually outside the box for, what we know of career mode, because pretty much that's the only thing that sets F1 apart, unfortunately, from other sports games, is that it doesn't have the driver transfers. And I've talked to other creators in other genres like FIFA. I've talked to my friend Niran in the FIFA community, the official FNG, about, comparing FIFA career mode to F1 career mode. We both agreed that F1 career mode is actually a much better career mode than FIFA, if it wasn't for the fact that FIFA still has that overbearing thing of everything can change and everything will change with the players, with, the footballers can move from team to team. You can have teams moving up and down in the championship. You can have different transfer budgets and whatnot, and you can have a whole bonkers stuff for stuff, and it's all licensed as well. That's the only thing that sets FIFA apart and kind of has one over F1. But really, in a lot of ways, the F1 career mode is so much more rich than FIFA is, but that's the one thing that FIFA has over F1 every single time, and that's pretty much the last piece of the puzzle. It's driver transfers. Like, how many times have I done driver transfers with PC mods? And so many times, every single time. So you guys watching, especially the guys who are on console that can't do that kind of modifying because they're not on PC, have, always said they love to see it. They love to, see different drivers move everywhere, and they want to do it themselves, but they can't because they're on console. And so I think now is the time, in the next 2 to 3 years, I really want to see that happen. And I think it needs to happen. And I think it can happen because Liberty Media are not stupid. Hopefully they understand and can look out that, every other sports game in the known universe has roster changes, has player transfers and everything like that, and so it needs to happen in F1, in the F1 game, soon enough. Otherwise, we are literally going to be hitting a brick wall of how far we can take the F1 career mode and how far the F1 game can actually span, because there will be a brick wall that we've done every other little tiny detail, and the last thing we have is driver transfers. So I think now the time to try and push Liberty Media, Cody's, and try and make it happen. And I know you guys have, teased about maybe, in the future, you never know, because when we've met you for testing, you've said you never know. I think it's now the time to stop asking that question and start asking when. Next 2 years, make it happen, or something like that. It's got to that point now where that is literally the last big major thing that they're missing, and so that's number 10 in the idea. But guys, let me know in the comments below any other ideas you have, and once we have another good 10, I'll make another video of these of F1 2019 game ideas. But if you did enjoy these ones and you did agree with some of those ideas, then let me know in the comments below, and hit that like button as well if you did enjoy the video. If you're new around here, do get subscribed for weekly full-on content. I've been aarava. I've enjoyed for today, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.